of change for my family. Catherine becomes Queen Consort. In recognition of her own loyal public service, I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to.
The monarchy was not rattled by a speech, a scandal, or an open act of defiance. It was shaken by a single sealed message, placed carefully before Princess and carrying the full weight of a dying king's final decision. And when she revealed what it contained, the room fell into a silence that no royal aid, no rehearsed protocol, and no careful diplomatic language could soften. Prince William and Princess Catherine were no longer simply the monarchy's distant future. They were the answer King Charles had already chosen, quietly, deliberately, and without apology. Before we go any deeper into what this truly means for the royal family, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a single update. And held the sealed document with both hands. For a brief moment, even she seemed to feel its weight pressing against her palms. This was no casual note dashed off in passing. It was a sealed instruction, a private written command, preserved for a specific royal moment, and Charles had placed it in his sister's hands for one reason above all others. He trusted her not to bend. The crown it spoke of meant far more than jewels or ceremony. It meant the living authority of monarchy itself, that ancient, invisible weight passed from one sovereign to the next across centuries of history and sacrifice, and revealed the king's final wish during a private royal family briefing held at Windsor Castle. The meeting had been called specifically to contain uncertainty before uncertainty could take control of the room, the family, and ultimately the institution. William did not speak. He sat with his jaw set and his posture deliberately controlled, but the shock reached his eyes before he could conceal it. Catherine lowered her gaze slowly, not from weakness, but because she understood, even before and had finished reading, exactly what those words were taking from the quiet life she had protected so carefully. Anne's voice remained steady throughout. Yet every sentence landed with the force of something final and irrevocable. Charles had not simply written that the prince and princess should one day become king and queen. He had written that they must become the monarchy's necessary next chapter, because they had already begun carrying it in spirit long before they would ever carry it in name. Camilla did not move at first. Then, slowly and almost painfully, her hand tightened around the arm of her chair. That single gesture revealed what no prepared statement could ever cover. She had not been told the full force of the king's words in advance. She had not expected and to read them so plainly, with such unflinching directness. The queen consort looked toward William, then toward Catherine, and the silence between them grew heavier than any accusation spoken aloud. Charles had placed his deepest trust not in comfort, not in soft compromise, but in the two people he believed could steady the crown when sentiment alone was no longer enough, and finally lowered the message. But the damage had already become destiny. William looked as though a door had closed firmly behind him. Catherine seemed to understand that another had opened directly in front of them both. Camilla remained still, wounded by what had been withheld, while Anne carried the quiet burden of being the one who had made it undeniable. The king's final wish had been spoken aloud. But before the family could fully grasp what Charles had truly chosen, they needed to confront the people standing closest to the crown, and the wounds each of them had carried into that room. Every royal crisis has faces behind it. This one had four that mattered most. And the unflinching witness. William, the son, suddenly handed his father's greatest burden. Catherine, the woman asked to become far more than a princess. And Camilla, the queen consort, forced to hear that the king's deepest confidence had been placed somewhere else. In that room, titles meant nothing. Reactions meant everything. Anne kept her eyes fixed on the message, but everyone understood she was carrying more than paper. The king's final instruction was a private order left by Charles to guide what should happen when the monarchy reached its most delicate and dangerous moment. He had placed that order in his sister's hands for a reason that required no explanation, and had never chased power. She was the one Charles believed would not bend, would not soften, and would not trade duty for the temporary comfort of an easier path. That mattered because this wish was not only about family feeling. It was about who would protect the crown when emotion, grief, and competing ambitions began pulling it apart. William felt the words settle over him like a sentence he had not asked to receive. The prince had spent years preparing for kingship in every formal and technical sense. but preparation was something altogether different from being pushed toward it by his father's final written command. He looked toward Catherine, and in that single glance there was pride, fear, and something that came very close to pain. She had stood beside him through storms before. But this was different. Catherine was not being celebrated as a supportive wife. She was being named as the woman Charles himself believed could help steady the monarchy at its most fragile hour. And that kind of trust carried a price no crown, however ancient or beautiful, could fully conceal. Camilla understood that price immediately. The queen consort did not need anyone to translate what the room had already made plain. If William and Catherine were now the emotional and strategic center of the king's final plan, then her own influence over the next royal chapter had been quietly reduced, before she had even been given the opportunity to respond. Camilla looked toward and once more, searching for some gentler meaning beneath the words. But Princess and offered none. Her sympathy was genuine. Her loyalty to Charles, however, was stronger. She had known this moment would wound the queen consort, and she had delivered it anyway, because Charles had chosen clarity over peace. Then and noticed the second sealed folder resting beside the first. That small detail changed the atmosphere in the room once again. One message had carried the king's heart. The other appeared to carry something far closer to power. William saw Anne's gaze shift and asked the question that had been building inside him since the first words were read. Had his father written this after one particular moment, one specific turning point that had changed his mind forever? And did not answer. Immediately. She only lowered her gaze, and that silence pulled everyone present back to the hidden moment the palace had tried desperately to forget, but could never fully erase. The king's final wish had not arrived from nowhere. It was born from a single moment, a ceremony meant to display unity that instead became the hour that exposed everything. Charles had watched that day with the eyes of a man searching for truth in the faces of the people closest to him. He saw who steadied the crown under pressure. He saw who fractured. And he saw who carried the public's trust without reaching for it, without performing it, without asking for any applause in return. After that day, nothing inside him remained undecided. Charles remembered what would become known as the Windsor Unity Balcony Ceremony with a silence that never left him. The event had been planned as a public royal appearance, the family standing together to project strength, calm, and continuity after weeks of private strain. Windsor mattered specifically because it was not simply another palace backdrop. It was a symbol of survival itself, the place where the monarchy returned when it needed to prove that old wounds could still be covered by duty. But that day, the cover slipped. Charles watched the procession tighten. He heard confusion ripple through the order, and he witnessed the moment that everyone around him immediately wanted erased. William moved first. When the line broke and a young page froze under the weight of public pressure, the prince did not panic. He stepped forward with quiet, deliberate calm, guiding the disrupted procession back into order before the mistake could harden into public humiliation. Catherine saw the child's face change and understood something that protocol alone could never teach. She softened the moment without drawing attention to herself. She protected the young boy's dignity and carried on as if compassion itself had simply become part of the ceremony. Charles saw both of them clearly in that instant. William had demonstrated command without cruelty. Catherine had demonstrated grace without performance. Together, they had achieved something that others around them had only managed to attempt. Charles felt pride, but that pride hurt him. The king saw his son looking ready for kingship, and that truth struck him harder than any criticism from the outside world ever could. William had become the future before his father had fully released the present. Catherine's quiet courage moved him even more, precisely because she had not reached for attention. She had given protection where others had seen only embarrassment. Charles understood why the public trusted her, and he understood, with painful clarity, why that trust made certain people inside the family deeply uncomfortable. The monarchy was changing, not with noise, but with evidence no one could deny. And heard the truth later that evening through a private recorded conversation with Charles, preserved as part of his documented account for the family. The king told his sister that the balcony had shown him the monarchy's future, and he asked her to remember those words if he could not repeat them himself. And never forgot. She also never forgot Camilla once questioning whether William and Catherine's rising place in the public's affection had become politically dangerous within the family structure. Charles heard that comment. He carried it with him. And when Anne finally revealed the connection, Camilla demanded the explanation the room had been quietly dreading. The past had been named, and now the confrontation that everyone had feared could no longer be avoided. The palace could survive public storms, but private confrontations were far more dangerous, because there was no audience to perform for, no statement to hide behind, and no ceremonial language to soften the blow. Behind a closed door, Anne and Camilla faced each other without aids, without protocol, and without anyone left to interrupt the truth. A chair scraped against the floor. A hand came to rest on the edge of a table. Then Camilla asked the question no one else had dared to speak aloud. Why had she not been trusted with the king's final wish? And did not answer quickly. She understood that the queen consort was not asking for comfort. She was asking why Charles had placed his deepest confidence somewhere else, and what that said about the years they had shared together. The Windsor briefing still hung over the room. That meeting had not shared the king's final wish like a family memory passed gently from hand to hand. It had been delivered like a command. And Camilla believed that her place beside Charles through decades of struggle and sacrifice should have earned her the right to know before and ever opened the folder. Camilla's voice stayed low, but the pain behind every word sharpened it into something impossible to ignore. She had stood beside Charles through years of public judgment, institutional silence, and relentless suspicion. She had endured the full cost of being close to the throne when that closeness was unwelcome. And now, in one quiet sitting room, she found herself pushed to the outer edge of his final trust. The queen consort was not wounded because William and Catherine had been praised. She was wounded because Anne had been chosen as the keeper of the message, while she had been left to hear it alongside everyone else. Anne felt the pain in the room, but she refused to dress it in softer language. Charles had not doubted Camilla's history with him. He had feared something else entirely. He had feared that love, loyalty, guilt, and competing pressures would crowd around his final instruction before it could reach the people it was truly meant for. He had needed someone who would protect the wish without negotiating it, someone who could stand completely outside the hunger of the moment. The words landed with weight. Camilla looked away, but she did not deny them. Then the second sealed folder returned to the conversation, like a shadow neither woman could step away from. Camilla asked whether it placed formal limits on her future role, and Anne's silence became more frightening than any direct answer could have been. Anne finally stepped back from the table. The room felt colder after her decision was made clear. Camilla remained seated, her pride quietly bruised and her influence suddenly uncertain. She had received the explanation she demanded. She had not received the comfort she had wanted. A royal wish can sound purely sentimental until the machinery behind it begins to move. The second folder changed everything. It did not shout. It did not accuse. It simply named responsibilities, transferred influence, and drew a clear line between ceremonial presence and future command. William read it once, then set it down with deliberate care. Catherine watched his face change, and knew in that moment that the crown had already shifted, quietly, irrevocably, and without ceremony. The second sealed folder was not another emotional message. It contained transition instructions, written directions outlining how royal duties, authority, and public responsibilities should begin moving from one generation to the next. Charles had not only entrusted his son with affection, he had entrusted him with command. Catherine understood the difference immediately. A blessing could be honored quietly, privately, and on one's own terms. A command had to be lived in public, watched by the nation, judged by the family, and carried even when the heart was not ready. And spoke with controlled clarity, and the room followed every word. Charles had framed the transition as protection, not punishment. He had wanted continuity, stability, and public confidence at a moment when the monarchy could not afford confusion or visible fracture, and made clear that the king believed William and Catherine had already become the safest bridge the institution had forward. The prince was to chair a private transition council, a small inner group designed to guide sensitive decisions before they reached the broader household. Catherine would be given direct influence over the monarchy's public-facing priorities, the causes, appearances, and gestures of connection that shaped how the institution reached ordinary lives. Catherine stayed composed, but the pressure reached her in silence. She understood exactly what public-facing authority meant in practice. Every charity visit, every carefully worded statement, Every display of calm under pressure would no longer be seen as support for William. It would be read as part of the monarchy's survival plan. The princess feared what this would cost her family's peace, because duty never asked politely. It entered the home. It changed the table. It followed the children into rooms where cameras could not reach. William saw that fear cross her face and looked away, not because he did not care, but because he felt the same weight pressing against him from the other direction. Camilla saw something else entirely. Her name appeared in the folder, but only in ceremonial terms, connected to formal appearances and symbolic duties, not to the deeper architecture of strategy or transition. That single detail explained her earlier pain more sharply than any argument could have managed. The queen consort had not been erased, but she had been contained, and Charles had drawn that line himself. Then the first consequence arrived. Palace staff received the order to prepare a revised royal schedule under William and Catherine's direction. Everyone inside the household understood immediately what that meant. The king's wish had left the page. It had entered the working life of the palace. The first signs of change were small, but no one inside the palace missed them. A meeting moved rooms. A briefing list was rewritten. A private secretary hesitated before using William's name first, and then didn't hesitate again. Somewhere in the quiet, intricate machinery of monarchy, the old order exhaled its final breath. Catherine saw the revised schedule, touched the page, and understood that Charles's wish had already begun reshaping their daily lives in ways they would not be able to reverse. William felt the shift before anyone dared to describe it aloud. Senior aides began turning toward the prince at the opening of each discussion, waiting for his judgment before anyone else shaped the direction of the room. The transition instructions were no longer words preserved inside a folder. They had become operational, put into daily palace action through schedules, meetings, appointments, and decisions. Charles's wish had crossed the line from private feeling into royal function. The king had not only named trust, he had changed the working order of the house, and watched the first phase with a discipline that made hesitation dangerous. She knew how easily powerful wishes could be delayed, softened, or quietly buried beneath layers of polite language. The princess made certain that did not happen. Every redirected briefing carried meaning. Every revised list confirmed that William and Catherine were no longer waiting at the edge of the future. They were being moved to its center. Catherine held the revised schedule and felt something close to sadness rise before pride could reach her. She saw the names, the times, the duties, the consultations, and she understood what each one would take from the life she had guarded so carefully for so long. More duty meant more distance. More public trust meant less private peace. William saw her hand pause on the page. He understood that the same wish that elevated them was also taking something away. The monarchy was gaining strength, but their family would pay the quiet price. Camilla received her own revised briefing note, and the message inside was impossible to misread. Several patronage decisions, the royal endorsements of charities, causes, and public projects that had long defined her public role, would now require consultation with Catherine. The queen consort read the line twice. She did not need anyone to explain what it meant. Her ceremonial role remained. But Catherine's influence had entered territory Camilla had once expected to guide. Then a private secretary quietly removed an old seating arrangement from the planning folder. No announcement followed. No voice was raised. Yet the room understood everything. The family hierarchy had changed before anyone had spoken it aloud. William felt the loneliness of command settle around him like a season that had arrived too soon. Catherine felt the sorrow of duty tightening its grip on something she could not hold back, and saw Charles's wish becoming real in every small detail. And before they could lead the monarchy together, William and Catherine needed one private moment, a moment where duty could no longer hide behind protocol, and where the weight they were carrying could be spoken honestly between them. Power is loud when people fight over it, but it is almost silent when two people choose to accept it together. William and Catherine stood alone. No aides, no advisors, no one to translate their fear into royal language. For the first time since and had revealed the wish, they were not heirs or symbols or strategic answers. They were husband and wife, facing the future their king had placed in their hands. William closed the door behind them. The noise of the palace seemed to disappear. William spoke first, but not like a future king. He spoke like a son still trying to breathe beneath his father's final confidence. The prince admitted he was afraid of stepping closer to the throne through grief rather than readiness. He had trained for duty across his entire adult life, but no amount of training could make a father's final wish feel light. Catherine did not rush to comfort him. She listened, because she understood that some fears had to be spoken honestly before they could be carried with any real strength. William looked at her then, and the silence between them became honest. Catherine answered with the truth she had been holding back. Becoming queen was not simply a title to be received and worn. It meant becoming the public face of steadiness, the person expected to remain visibly calm when private life was cracking behind closed doors. The princess acknowledged that parts of herself would have to be surrendered. Parts the public might never fully understand and would never be given the chance to mourn. William took her hand, not as a gesture for anyone else's benefit, but as recognition. He knew the crown would ask much from him. He now saw with full clarity how much it would ask from her. Then William shared the sentence Charles had once spoken to him during a private conversation preserved in the family record. The king had said that Catherine would steady the crown when tradition alone could not. That truth changed the room. It made the wish feel less like a command and more like a judgment Charles had reached quietly, after watching them both survive pressure that would have broken lesser partnerships. Catherine absorbed the words, then gave the answer that turned inheritance into partnership. They would accept it together. Or not at all. William understood then that the monarchy was no longer asking only for his strength. It was asking for their unity. Catherine understood that her fear did not disqualify her. It proved she already knew the full cost of what was being asked. Together, they chose to carry the wish. Not as a burden forced upon them, but as a calling they would face side by side. And when the world finally heard what Anne had revealed, the monarchy's private wound became a national reckoning. By morning, the secret no longer belonged to Windsor. It belonged to the country. The word spread across front pages, television panels, palace gates, and breakfast tables. Some who heard them found reassurance. Some found what felt like betrayal. But everyone heard the same essential message. Charles had chosen William and Catherine as the monarchy's next heartbeat. And for one unforgettable morning, Britain watched the future arrive before the crown had even changed hands. William saw the headlines before the first palace call was finished. The story had reached major broadcasters and national newspapers simultaneously, and that mattered because a private royal wish had become a very public test of confidence. Catherine stood beside him, calm, but deeply aware that calm itself had become part of her duty to the institution. The palace could no longer retreat behind silence. Anne's revelation had forced the household to acknowledge the king's wish without retreating from its implications. The official statement praised continuity, gratitude, and Charles's confidence in the prince and princess. Every word had been chosen carefully, to reassure the country without denying the truth, and to walk the thinnest possible line between transparency and protection. Camilla felt the country moving past her in real time. She listened as commentators spoke less about her place beside Charles and more about the future being carried by William and Catherine. The silence around her own name felt sharper than any direct criticism. She had survived years of open judgment. But this was different. This was not rejection shouted in anger. It was attention quietly, almost politely, shifting elsewhere. Then one image captured the day entirely. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered beneath grey morning skies as a newspaper front page declared, "The King's wish, William and Catherine to lead." A senior broadcaster called it not an abdication, but an emotional transfer of trust. And suddenly, the country had language for what the palace could not fully bring itself to say. And heard that phrase later and said nothing. She knew the public had understood enough, even if it would never know everything. In the end, the king's final wish was not simply a message about succession. It was a judgment about trust, and had carried it. William had accepted it. Catherine had absorbed it. Camilla had survived the pain of hearing it. And Charles, even in absence, had spoken with unmistakable clarity. The monarchy did not collapse beneath the weight of the revelation. It found the shape of its future. William understood at last that his father's trust had changed him permanently. The prince was no longer standing near the edge of tomorrow. He had become the living center of the monarchy's next chapter, and Catherine stood beside him not as support, but as equal architecture, and accepted her place in the story without pride. She had protected the king's words because duty demanded it, not because she had wanted control. She had carried the message until the moment it had to be spoken. She had absorbed the anger, the shock, and the pain because Charles had trusted her not to bend. And in the end, that trust made her the witness who forced the family to face the truth it had been circling for years. Catherine felt the meaning settle around her with quiet force. Becoming queen was no longer a distant idea wrapped in the comfortable abstractions of ceremony. It was endurance. It was sacrifice. It was learning to remain outwardly steady when the country looked for comfort and the family carried wounds no public statement could heal. The princess understood that glory had never been the point. Charles had seen her strength because she had never performed it. Camilla's pain remained real, and no final verdict could erase it. The queen consort had heard a wish that placed the future beyond her strongest influence, and that wound would not vanish simply because the palace moved forward. But she also understood something she had not wanted to accept at first. Charles had not written the wish to erase her. He had written it to secure what came after. After her, after him, after the old balance had reached its natural end. Silence finally replaced conflict, and stood with the knowledge that she had done what the king asked. William carried the gift and the burden without turning away. Catherine accepted the cost with the quiet courage that had always defined her. Camilla faced the ache of a future she could not command. And Charles's final wish became the monarchy's final verdict. The crown would survive, not because tradition alone demanded it, but because trust, steadiness, and partnership had shown the only way forward. There is no unresolved question left behind. Only the unmistakable truth that the king's final wish did not divide the monarchy forever. It revealed who was ready to carry it. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please give it a like and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.